This is the Expanding Boundaries podcast.
Do you feel trapped? Stuck in a world of mediocrity, constrained by bad habits, limiting beliefs, and feeling unfulfilled? Do you feel that deep down you know you were destined for much more? In Expanding Boundaries, you'll discover how you can break free and step into your real life, a life without limits. And now, here's your host, Michael McLeish.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Expanding Boundaries podcast. I've got a very fun show today. I think it's going to be a great conversation, and I can't wait to get started. So with me here, I've got Mr. Ken Abdullah, and he's become a friend of mine here, and he is the founder of an organization called Prosper Up, which features education, consulting, and automation opportunities to investors across the United States. They've got a demonstrated history of working with business-to-business, market planning, and startup. Prosper Up and KRA Consulting. They've quickly began to grow and are continuing to push the limits here. So with that, Ken, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, man. I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, this is going to be fun today. I really appreciate you taking some time out to have a conversation with us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess just to kind of start off, where in the world are you located right now?
So I'm in Tampa, Florida, man. I've been all over the place, but Tampa's my home, and we've set roots here, and I don't plan on going anywhere soon.
Yeah, okay. Where did you start out?
So I grew up Central Florida, but my father was kind of had us all over the place, frankly, just building and chasing, which is kind of where I got my entrepreneurial spirit. So I've been in New York. I've been actually all over the West Coast, Central America. I've been everywhere, but Florida's home for me.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. So what's with that? I mean, you've lived several places. What's one place in the world that you must visit at some point in your lifetime?
Oh man, that's a really good question. So, although I would consider myself well traveled, I don't think that I've traveled enough. So, for me,
Sure.
if I had to say somewhere in the U.S., very small town, but it would either be somewhere in Washington because it's beautiful, and then Spokane, Washington's beautiful, and then Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, super beautiful place. So in the U.S. there, and overseas, I've not traveled as much. So if you've got somewhere I must go to, I'd love to hear it.
Oh man, spin the globe and pick one. There's so many
Absolutely.
amazing places. Very cool. All right, so let's go to Coeur d'Alene. That one kind of rings a bell for me too. So
Yeah.
why would you want to visit there?
Man, so I got to spend a very short time there. And in the short time that I got to spend, for somebody that has dove really deep into like my mind and meditation and kind of nature, just being out there in the mountains and being out there and getting the best of both worlds, just super crystal clear lakes, and the golf courses are amazing there. Very small town vibe with a big city type atmosphere. It's pretty neat.
That's awesome. I've got one of my best friends from college. I think it's from Spokane actually, but he always
Yeah,
talked about Coeur d'Alene being like, that's an amazing place. You got to go visit.
it's
So
gorgeous.
it's on my
It's
bucket list
absolutely
too.
beautiful. Let's do it,
Awesome.
man. I'm in.
All right. We'll make it happen.
Definitely down.
So, all right. So, I mean, that's pretty obvious what you would do there for the most part. But is there any other like top 3 bucket list things that you would have to do there?
I mean, really, man, I've never done any type of like high mountain elevation climbing. I've never snowboarded. I've never done any of that type of stuff. And I've always been intrigued to do it. However, I'm born and raised in the South. So snow, cold, it doesn't work for me. So as much as I'd love to do it, I know like heights, like the ski lift, I'd be terrified. There's so many things that tell me not to do it, which is exactly why I have to do it.
Yeah. That
Okay,
resonates with me 100%. Well, come
yeah,
out here to
excellent.
Colorado. We'll get you a warm up anyway. And
I'm in,
on the
man.
slope.
Let's roll.
It's all about having the proper gear and knowing how to use it. Then you'll be warm and comfortable. It'll be all right. So
Oh man,
cool.
so actually, it's funny you say warm and comfortable. I moved to Maine. I lived in Maine for like 3.5 years, and I moved there without a jacket,
Oh my
without
gosh.
pants. Because I mean, I'm telling you, born and raised in the South through and through, super thin blood. And I moved to Maine in wintertime with no winter clothes. I spent like a year and a half there with like no jacket, nothing. So when it comes to being prepared for the cold, I don't know what that means.
All right. We'll take care of you. All right.
100%.
Well, so I mean, you have done some traveling though. Obviously, you've lived all these different places. When you
Yeah,
do travel, now that you know to bring a jacket and pants, besides the
right.
the clothing and toiletries, what's one thing that you would never leave home without when you do travel?
I don't know, man. I'm really kind of I don't plan. I'm not really a planner when it comes like my wife, it drives her crazy. I'm really kind of just like, hey, I'm down. Like let's roll. So there's a very good chance that I'm leaving without everything. And then be like, dang, I should have brought that. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that because I probably would have left everything except my wallet. That's about it.
All right, perfect. I love the answer. Actually, that's better. It's probably
For
better that
sure.
way. There's more adventure in that for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So tell us a little bit more, I guess. How did you get into the world of business in the first place? Like, what was life like as a kid, and kind of walk us through the progression to where you got to, in more recent times.
Yeah, 100%. So it's growing up, I wasn't, a crazy rags to riches type story. So in my mind, we were rich. But when I reflect, it's funny because I was recently just talking about this with my sister, my older sister. I lived in a hallway at one point in this little 600 square foot house. So it was me, my mom and dad, my sister, and we lived in this 2 bedroom house. But there was a hallway that went to the second bedroom, and I lived in that. But my mom and my dad, they made it a home, and I never knew the difference. So I had all the things. I had, just this upbringing. My dad was my coach in my sporting events. They never missed a game. Super super supportive. But the reason that I didn't know that is my father and mother were extremely hardworking individuals, but they were entrepreneurial. So they were trying to build their company, build their business, and I got to see that. Inside of seeing that, I also saw the sacrifice, but they made it the sacrificial things that they did helped me to understand as I was growing up that it was to provide. And it was much different than, I saw some of my friends grow up and they're like, oh, my parents are never around. And I'm like, well, I didn't never see that. I never understood what it was like for them not to be around because although they weren't, all the time, when they were there. They were 100% present. Family game nights, dinners, we vacationed, we did all those things. But that to say, I got to give my sister a ton of credit because frankly, I mean, I'd probably say 12, 14, 16 hours a day. It was just her and I while my parents were building. So that's what brought me up to kind of have that entrepreneurial itch. And frankly, my itch has always been to do it the way that they didn't do it. How do I build this empire but still be present all the time? Which has still proved challenging. So I wouldn't say by any means I mastered it, but that's how I got to like the business itch, man. Just watching my parents build, fail over and over again, and everybody thought they were crazy, the same way that people think we're crazy when we're building our companies, right?
Right.
It's wild. It's
Awesome.
absolutely wild.
Okay. So when did you first start? What was like your first, I mean, did you have a day job before you got into your first business, or did you come right out the gates out of school?
So I came out of the gates, man. So I was the kid that was selling candy. I was selling shoes. I was always doing something. So my very first business, looking back now, reflecting, was a lawn care business. I've always had that itch to build something that I could be, proud of. But at the time, my lawn care business, I was like 11, and I was cutting
Hmm.
grass in Kansas. I was in the middle of Kansas and cutting grass in my neighborhood, and I remember I was like buying toys or something like that. My friends were like trying to understand, like, how do you have money? And I started to teach them. So and actually, if my parents watch this is the first time they're going to hear it. So I actually wasn't cutting the grass after a while because I realized at a young age, like, hey, I don't necessarily have to do the work. I'll do the upfront work and go get the lawns. And I was just knocking doors at 11 years old, and I ended up with like 9 yards and two buddies that were cutting grass for me. But I would go out, like, ride my bike and come home all sweaty and tell my mom, like, I busted my butt today. So, yeah, I definitely wasn't doing that though.
That's incredible. So
So,
you very quickly figured out, let's get out of the operations and get into marketing and sales.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So, a salesman at a very, very young age, and but from that, what's really interesting is so my father started his own company after we went through just a roller coaster, man. So in 2000, my dad lost a career. He was with Domino's Pizza for 18 years. He ran his own franchise. He was head of franchise consultants for a long time, and that's when we were doing really well. had moved to Florida. We were traveling all over the place. And then I'll never forget the day that he lost his job. I'll never forget it. I remember seeing the look on his face. I remember my mom. I just remember all of the conversation. But what was really, really cool, and this is something I give them so much credit for, is they were so calm, and something that was life changing for us. For me and my sister, just devastation. What are we going to do? And they quickly moved, and they built their own company. So from that, when I got out of high school, I was actually working for my dad in the restaurant business. That was the first job I was ever fired from, rehired, and then fired from again. So my pop fired me from that a couple times. Taught me a lot though.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. So
Yeah,
when
man, it was wild.
what that was 2000 when the franchise went away and then they started their own business. How old were you at that time?
So I was 14. Is that right? Around either 12 to 14 in that time frame, and then I was there until I was 16. And man, I tell you what, working in a family business is hard as it is, but there's so many more lessons that come from being in like a service-based industry, and then also having someone that you care about, that you're with all the time, that you don't want to let down. It's one thing
Right.
that, like, "Oh, I don't want to let my superior down." I didn't want to let my parents down.
Yeah.
And there was many times that I did. I didn't know it. I was 16, doing silly stuff I shouldn't have been doing. Man, to get me to show up on time to work was pulling teeth. That's why I kept getting fired. But end of the day, man, that's a big deal. I think everybody, if they have the opportunity to work for someone they care about deeply, that to do it.
Yeah.
It shaped a lot for me.
That's huge. I mean, that's where I started too. I was on a family farm and working for my
Yeah.
dad, the same way. And yeah, lessons learned there have stuck to this day for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. It's crazy in the moment you don't realize like this thing's gonna stick with me for, forever. And it's funny because, when we're going through that, I've got three kids now, and I can tell you, I always would say, man, I'll never be like my parents. I'm never gonna do this. But man, just the other day I said something to my kid or to my youngest son, and I was like, damn, I sound just like my dad right now. So, so I don't know
Never
that
say
you can
never.
escape it.
Yeah,
It's tough, man.
100%. All right, so let's keep on going. So you graduated high school at some point. Then what was the play for you then?
So I didn't graduate high school. I actually dropped
Oh, you
out.
didn't. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm a high school dropout, and I ended up kind of stumbling through. I always make the statement that I didn't fail school. School failed me. I was
That's a good
always,
expression.
yeah, man. School just didn't work for me. I tried to apply, but it was. I've always struggled being placed in a box. Like I didn't want to do it the way that everybody else had to do it. I always either was like, "Hey, what's the better way to do this, or the more efficient way to do this?" But I'm telling you, man, I would get in trouble for asking questions. I got in trouble one time for going to the bathroom, and I was just like, "This isn't for me. Like, I'm not going to raise my hand to ask you for permission to go to the bathroom." So I wouldn't say that I was a bad kid or a rebellious kid. I just didn't fit into school, into that box. So dropping out, I found my way through the labor force. I was working warehouse jobs, trying to climb the corporate ladder. I was doing everything that they said to do, but it just wasn't working. The get a good job thing for me just never stuck. So it wasn't until later on in life I realized like I'm unemployable, flat out. I can't work for somebody, and it's not that I wouldn't do a great job. I don't know, man. I'm unemployable. That's for sure.
So, what was the emotion when you came to that conclusion? Was it fearful or was it liberating? I mean, what was the? I mean, maybe it was a little of a spectrum there of things that you had to go through in that moment, right?
So I think that any entrepreneur that listens to what I'm about to say is going to just laugh and nod their head because when the decision was finally made, I was so excited. I was just like, this is it. I'm going to be a billionaire tomorrow. I've got the plan. It's all going to work out perfect. And then you get punched in the mouth immediately. Not immediately, but almost immediately. And you begin to realize, like, man, this is going to be tough. So I make the joke that I was just too stupid to quit. I just kept going and kept going, and eventually, found traction and was able to build. But I definitely didn't do it by myself. There was great mentors in my life. And one of them, who we share with Mark, tremendous impact on my life, along with my father and some other individuals that when I was in corporate were like, you shouldn't be here. And I had to be bright enough and open minded enough to understand that they were giving me guidance, not criticism. They were saying that I'm made for more. I've got it in me. I just need to grow up a little bit. And being open minded enough to see that has I mean, literally changed my life at a pretty young age, for sure.
Yeah, what a blessing to have that voice in your ear.
Yeah, 100%. There, dude. If you don't, if you're closed off to the world and you're closed off to people that are telling you things, like, you don't have to be super hypercritical, but if someone's saying something to you that could, as long as you're not emotional about it and you try to understand where it's coming from, if you can look at that objectively, man, there's so much growth that can come from just listening to it. You don't have to take it all, but if you can be open minded to it, it'll change the game for you,
Hmm,
for sure.
very good. All right. So you're unemployable at this point. What's next?
100%. I always think like, man, I wonder what happened if I interviewed, but I don't ever want to be in the position where I have to.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine now, if
Yeah,
I had to interview
100%.
somebody. Yeah.
It'd be
I'd be
wild,
kicked
man.
out. All right.
Eat quickly.
Yeah. So what happened after that? So you made the decision, I'm all in. I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You got kicked in the teeth a few times. So what were you trying to do that didn't work out so good?
So I was literally, man, everything. That was the problem, is I was trying to do everything. I was the guy that sold the energy drinks. I did multi-level marketing companies. And frankly, I did well at all of them. I made a lot of money along the way, but I never found anything that I could really just scale. And, I was jumping from one thing to the other and trying not to damage my name and reputation along the way. So I ended up sliding back into the corporate America world after I had my first son. So my first son I had at 19. So I had to grow up very quickly. At that point, I was doing all the right things for all the wrong reasons. I was trying to get as much money as possible so that I could get out of the small town that I grew up in. And in my mind, the thing I was telling myself is, I'm doing this for my child, for my son. But really, what I realized at a very quickly is I was running. I was running away from the small town. I was running away from all of the chaos that I had brought upon myself. And instead of being there, I ended up making this excuse and diving strictly into, how do I become the best at this job to get the most money for my kid while he doesn't know? Because in my mind, I grew up watching my parents work, 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 and I didn't want my son to see that. But it ended up doing more damage than good. And it was the biggest blessing at the same time, because when I finally realized, man, he needs me, he doesn't need the job or the money, that's when things hit the fan for me. And I grew up. I literally grew up. I quit my job on a whim, quit a high salary job. And that's when I went all in on myself. Got
Mm.
punched in the teeth again. But from that, it was the first time that I realized, all right, I'm in a fight now. Every other time you got punched in the teeth, and it's like, all right, just keep going. But you would get by it because they were small businesses, they were small opportunities. But now I got another mouth to feed. And I'm in a fight and I'm going 12 rounds with the champ. I got punched. I got to keep going. And that's really how I came into being unemployable and knowing it's up to me. Nobody's going to do this for me. The job could replace me at any point in time. The market could replace me at any time. So I need to be extremely valuable to the marketplace, wear my heart on my sleeve, let people know who I really am, and build something that my name and family can be proud of. And that's what I'm working for till this day.
I love it. All right. So I mean, there's a lot to unpack just in that, but the one thing that
Yeah.
stands out is how to be valuable to the marketplace. How do you identify that? Like, what was it for you? I mean, it's probably different for different people with different
Yeah.
skill sets and different belief systems, but what was that for you?
Man, it was really just putting everything out there. When you start to actually, when you look at society today, there's so many people that are guarded. Everybody's got a wall up. Everybody's worried about, what's this guy, what's in it for this guy? What's he
Mhm.
after? What's he coming after? And for me, it was like, man, if I could just share as much information as possible and give as much value as possible, then at the very least, I'm going to get some really good people around me.
Mm.
And I put so much emphasis on my network and the relationships, and something that all of my mentors have taught me over the years is relationship capital is the most important piece to this thing. If anything, I would say that's the secret to business is if you've got the right people and you've got the right relationships and you do what you say you're going to do, even if it's not within the timeline, but if you communicate like, hey, I know I said that this was happening, it still is, but it's just not going to happen during this timeline. And owning everything, then at the end of the day, that is really the breakthrough. So that's the value that I try to bring to the marketplace. And what really has helped me to excel is just giving it all away. And then from that, massive relationships and massive amounts of money have come from that.
That's so counterculture, right? That's not
It
what we're
is.
taught in school, or at least, I don't know, intrinsically, it's not what we're taught in our culture and in
It's
our
not.
schools, right?
It's not at all. It's quite the opposite, frankly. And I think that's why everybody's like, man, what's in it for this guy? I recently had a call with a client that he was like, man, he was coming into my education company and he was like, if you're so good at this, why are you taking time out of your day to teach other people? And really what it boils down to is the value exchange for me in teaching that individual how to make, money and become more valuable in the market and trading stocks, trading futures and just making more money. Well, that the benefit for me is now you have more money and I still do real estate deals. I still have other businesses. So I've taught you how to make more and how to be more valuable. Well, guess what? That means that I've got access to that if you'd be willing to. That doesn't mean that he's going to say yes or she's going to say yes. However, that exchange for me is that relationship capital. That I'm in it for the long run, man. I'm 30, 40 years out is what I'm looking for.
That is incredible. Yeah, we're all thinking about the next payday, right?
Yeah,
And you're out there thinking, okay, I don't need this right now. I might have to cash in on this relationship later, but right now I'm just going to plant seeds and take life where
that's it, man.
let life take me where it goes, right?
That's it. When you got to plant seeds and you got to water them, man. That's you're just making deposits, right? You're making
Yeah.
deposits in somebody, and then eventually there's going to be a withdrawal. But imagine, I come to you and I'm just withdrawing from you and withdrawing. Eventually, the bank account runs dry and it's
Yep.
negative, and you're just going to be like, Ken, like I don't have anything for you, man. Like you're an ask hole. You just keep asking, asking, taking. So if we can give more, then frankly we can take more. So we have to deposit before we can make withdrawals.
I love it. What else can I say? All right.
I
So
love it, man.
I know recently you've been going through some challenges here with your health. So,
Yeah.
if you can, just share a little bit about that and how that's impacted your daily life.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So I was diagnosed with cancer back in September, and man, you talk about just flip your world upside down. Try not to get emotional. It's like the movies, man. A doctor comes in and he says, hey, take a seat. I got some things we need to talk about. You're gonna have to make some phone calls. And just like the movies, the room goes dark. He says the words, and I I don't remember anything after that. I
Mm.
just remember sitting there, and what they don't show in the movies is the 2 hours that they're filling out paperwork and talking about family planning and all of these crazy things, and you're just at a loss. And during that time, you can't talk to anybody. You can't make phone calls yet. So my wife didn't know.
Mm.
So you start to think about your kids. What am I going to do? Does this mean I'm going to die? And in that moment, when the world does come back, for me, I thought of what happened with my parents. I got extremely calm. I got extremely focused. I was good until I started to make the phone calls. I was good until my wife walked in the room with my baby.
Mm.
That shook me up.
Ugh.
And obviously I love my wife to death. I love her through and through. She was there when we had nothing, and she's been along the way the whole time. But when I saw my baby, I was like, man, I can't let these kids down. I can't let my oldest down. I got to figure this out. So just getting rocked like that, when the amount of clarity that you have to have is all right. Now it's a real fight. We talked about the 12 rounds with the champ earlier. That now I'm going with, like, we're in the championship rounds at this point. And what's crazy is
Yeah.
that's figurative, but for me that was reality. It was like, how many rounds do I have left? And it's a terrifying moment. But in that calm came so much clarity, and more so than anything, I realized, and this is something I think a lot of people can benefit from, is I had built all of these companies. I built what I call a Frankenstein business. So a Frankenstein business is you just build and you build and you're trying to bring this beast to life. And at the end, if you allow it to, this monster will kill you. And I had built these Frankenstein companies where I'd spent so much time, and it was the same thing the same mistake. I had repeated it twice. The same mistake I'd mentioned earlier with my oldest, I had done again. And I was, sacrificing time to build this empire and to have this money and to travel and do all these things. But none of that shit mattered when this doctor was like, you have cancer. You need to start planning. And what's crazy is the type of cancer that I had. So it was testicular cancer. That's a 95% approval or survival rate. It's not a big deal until they tell me that it had spread or was spreading to my stomach, where stomach cancer is morbid. It's a morbid conversation at that point.
Yeah.
And that's when reality hits. And you have to make a whole lot of decisions very quickly. Sorry, that was a little long-winded and emotional, but
No, it's
it's a
perfect.
tough one.
So, you said early on you got calm. You found, obviously with a few moments there. I got chills when you're talking about, when you saw your baby, with your
Yeah.
wife. I totally get that. And then you found clarity, right? And you're like, okay, this is the path I'm going to be on. The fight begins. I want to have, I don't want to let my kids down, my family down.
Yeah.
But you had a choice there, right? What was the natural urge? You had an alternative to that, right?
Yeah, 100%. And let me tell you, that alternative was just screaming. Like, it's in your face. Like, dude, it's easier to just ball up and shut everybody out and not talk about it. But in that clarity and in that calm, I realized a lot of good can come from this. Everybody's watching, everybody's looking. And by everybody, I meant when I have to tell my oldest son, when I have to tell my wife, when I have to tell my parents, my sister, my friends, my investors, hey, this is something that's happening with me.
Yeah.
They're looking to see how I'm going to respond. If I'm panicking, my wife is going to panic. If I'm, scared, my son's going to be scared. So it wasn't that I wanted to be brave for everybody, but I knew everybody else was watching. So inside of that, if this was to be something that, took me out early, then at the very least, that fight would have been a hell of a fucking fight. And I know that everybody would have been able to stand proudly and say, man, he was a brave motherfucker. It was,
Yeah.
it wasn't, calm, burn everything to the ground. It was, all right, cool. We got this small speed bump. We've been punched in the mouth before. Keep it moving. So, what's really cool that came from this is very recently I got great news. My blood work had come back very good. The tumor markers were down, and the spread had stopped. And inside
That's
of that
incredible.
news, it was like, all right, half the battle's over. It's not gone, but half
Right.
the battle's over. The scary part about that is they don't know what I'm doing. I'm not taking any medications. I'm not doing chemotherapies. I'm doing everything naturally. And inside of that, my family has gotten healthier. Our food intake has gotten better. My children are learning better habits. My parents are doing much better. And it's just like, there was so much bad that could have come from it, and me spiraling out of control versus getting calm and clear to make a big impact on not only my personal life, but my family's, which is really cool. So some great habits have come from that.
Wow, I never even thought of that. The impacts of those around you. Following
Yeah.
suit in some way, seeing what you're doing, and absorbing some of those better habits, better ways of living, and benefiting from it. So that's incredible.
Yeah, man, it's been an extreme blessing in disguise. And I'm always down for the challenge, but this challenge I wasn't ready for. But once we got it, it was like, all right, I'm a firm believer that life happens for us, not to us. And this was an opportunity for me to really show up and show what I'm made of for my family to follow suit. So inside of that, amazing foundation was set.
Very cool. So you had mentioned the Frankenstein business that you built. So how has that changed now since all this came about?
Man, so time blocking has changed my life. I am very stingy with my time now, whereas before my companies would take up everything. I've found ways to go back to when I was a child with that lawn business and get all of the monkeys off my back, get and create a business that's able to be self-sustainable. If something was to happen to me prior, my family wasn't set. My wife would have had to go back to work. My children wouldn't be able to, have the fruits of all the labor that we've been putting into. Whereas now, understanding that in that time I could have been wiped off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that was to take place for certain, they're okay. They're set. My wife won't have to go back to work. My children will be able to enjoy that. But more so than anything, they get to enjoy me now and I get to enjoy them now. The businesses still operate. And from that, a ton of clarity and most importantly, ownership to my team. I was hindering their growth by doing everything. I was hindering by stepping in and wanting to have control. Our mentor Mark, he always says we're arsonists, right? We go in and we start messing stuff up, and that's the truth, man. When I get into the businesses, I do more damage than good. Whereas before, I was like, "Hey, I'm fixing things," and that's where I found I was losing people. It was because of me. So by stepping out of the way, we make more money. I have more time. And frankly, I'm scared that I have more time. So now I'm dabbling in other things to make sure I'm not getting in trouble. But in short, my time is dedicated to spending time with them. And when my team needs me, I'm there. But most importantly, all that to say, being present when I'm with whoever it is that I'm with. If I'm with my wife, the phone's not out. If I'm playing with my kids, I'm not answering a text message. If I'm with my team, I'm with my team. And me and my wife have a rule. If she's calling me, it's you call me twice. If I don't get it the first time, I know it's not important. If you called me back to back, whatever is happening, I stop what I'm doing because she needs me right there. Or a 911 text. Other than that, I'm with you right now. There's no distractions. It's me and you and the audience, which I hope gets some good value from this.
Well, I know I have, and I'm sure everybody listening is as well. So what a good
I love
share,
it.
Ken. I appreciate that.
100%.
Well, now if you could go back to your younger self, let's say you're 20 years old all over again, or even younger, 16 maybe. What do
Yeah.
you think would be the most meaningful advice that you would give him right now?
It's wild that you asked me that question because this is probably not the answer that you thought would come. So I talk to my younger self every night. And what I mean by that is at nighttime, I have a ritual and a routine where right before I go to bed, or excuse me, right before I go to sleep, I think about the best part of my day, whatever that was. And I replay and I relive that to go to sleep happy instead of worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. Cause I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow. And that's very real. None of us do. I don't talk about days of the week. We always make the joke that, hey, you never know if it's Wednesday or Thursday. For me, it's a new day. There is no
Hmm.
Tuesdays or Wednesdays. It's a new day that none of us that are alive right now have experienced. So tomorrow is whatever tomorrow brings. But when I go to sleep, not only am I thinking about that great day, but I'm also telling my younger self in my head to keep pushing, to keep driving. Things are going to be challenging. You're going to experience these things. And without getting super spiritual or, tin hat, I don't know if there's another timeline, and I don't know if there's the intuition is my future self talking to me. So if that is true, well, my present self is going to talk to my past self, because if my past self was getting intuition from then, who the hell is it coming from? I don't know. So what I always tell younger me that I hope future me, if there is one, is telling me is that even though I'm going to face these obstacles and challenges, there's not anything that I'm not capable of overcoming. It's just you have to stay true to what you say that you're going to do, and the mental fortitude that you have to go down the path that you and I are on, and any entrepreneur, is the most important piece of all of this. Mental fortitude, being able to do what you say and write that contract and sign it and fulfill it when nobody's watching. Something as simple as saying, hey, I'm going to stick to doing this every single day for the next 70 days or 75 hard, for instance. That's a tough challenge.
Yeah.
I encourage a ton of people to go and do, but doing that, and if you fail, nobody knows that you failed but you. But if you let
Right.
yourself slide on that, man, you broke a covenant, you broke a contract with yourself that your mental state will take note of, and now your subconscious mind knows you're not serious. But
Yeah.
if you're serious and you sign that contract and you hold yourself to it, you will do amazing things. So that's the advice I give my younger self every day.
That is huge. All right, thank you for that. Yeah,
Of
it's
course.
really about trusting yourself, right? And if you break your own rules all the time, you're not going to trust yourself. So by doing something very simple and reinforcing it, now you've got power, right? I know when I say this, I'm going to do it.
Tremendous power.
Yeah,
Tremendous power. You know the average day or the most popular day to start a diet? It's Monday.
it's Monday.
Everybody's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I'll start a diet on Monday." Why? Like, you're still gonna be unhealthy Sunday, but it's Thursday, but you're gonna give yourself the weekend to go do more damage. Just start. Just start. Sign the contract with yourself today and start. Make the move. It's it's wild. And inside of that, man, your circle will begin to change because you'll start to recognize other people that have the mental fortitude. Like, I don't go out with my buddies anymore and kill myself. What I mean by that is, I used to go out and, football games all the time and getting drunk on Sunday watching the games. And like, just, I was going out with a group of people to literally kill myself for a couple hours.
Mm.
My body is, being poisoned. And I'm like, man, are these the type of people I'm going to be rolling with if I'm trying to get to where I'm going? I don't think so. So I made the decision and I literally stopped that day, and I've just been keeping it moving, man.
that's all. That's huge. I mean, set the spoon down, get on that diet
That's
right
it.
now. Yep. Uh,
100%.
Yep. That's amazing. Awesome. All right, Ken. Well, how can our guests listening right now, how can they find you or connect with you?
Yeah, so I am social medias, Facebook, official Ken Abdullah. That's on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm all over. Email address is info@prosperupautomation.com.
Okay. I'll make sure those are in the show notes again. So anybody that wants to reach out to you can do so. So
Awesome, man. I appreciate you a ton, brother.
yeah, Ken, thank you so much for being on the show here. I got a ton of value out of it personally. Glad to get to know you just a little bit better outside our prior conversations. So
Yes, sir.
thank you for being here.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it a ton.
All right. Well, for those of you listening, think about one big idea or takeaway from today's show, from what Ken shared about his story, and process that. Maybe rewind it, listen to it again, and then take some action, right? Take that action, big or small, and work on expanding your boundaries today. All right. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
This is the podcastfactory.com.